That brings us to petition number 2086 to recognise the vaccine injured and offer appropriate treatment. And this has been lodged by William Queen. And it calls on the Scottish Parliament to urge the Scottish Government to acknowledge those injured by COVID-19 vaccines and to have the NHS offer appropriate treatment to those who are injured. Now, the SPICE briefing explains that when presented to a GP, treatment isn't necessarily based on or connected to the cause of the illness, but on the alleviating the symptoms and, if possible, treating the underlying cause if this can be identified. It notes that injury caused by the COVID-19 vaccine is still a live area of research and that it is very difficult to find comprehensive and reliable evidence and research that details and defines COVID-19 vaccine injury. But it's an issue I know of with which I have constituents who are also concerned. The Scottish Government's response to the petition acknowledges that on rare occasions COVID-19 vaccines can cause injury and that concerns over the safety of vaccines are not taken lightly by the Scottish Government. The Government's submission states that recipients of the vaccines are given as much information on the potential side effects as possible and that recipients must give informed consent before receiving a vaccination. The petitioner has provided 2 written submissions, the first of which calls for the vaccine injured to be given time at a platform to speak about their experiences and asks for the Scottish Government to meet with the vaccine injured group. And the second submission calls for more research into symptoms and illnesses resulting from vaccination, improving diagnosis and treatment for the mast cell activation syndrome, specialist clinics or multidisciplinary teams and financial support for private medical care where adequate treatment cannot be provided on the NHS. So, in the light of the responses we've received, I wonder if colleagues have any clear idea about how we might proceed. Mr Ewing.
I do think we should write to the Scottish Government convener to ask how it can be confident that first, specialist diagnostic testing and specialist treatment as set out by the petitioner is available when required, and second, that healthcare providers are aware of the possible side effects of COVID-19 vaccines and apply this knowledge when considering treatment for symptoms which may have arisen as a result of this vaccination. Perhaps just add by way of comment that recently I did read in one of the more serious newspapers of some doubts about, I won't go into the details, I don't think it's appropriate, of one of the COVID vaccines that were raised by, I believe, a reputable organisation. So I just wanted to mention that because, you know, it is the subject of some current controversy. So I do think that we need to drill down a little bit more and write to the Scottish Government to raise these concerns.
Thank you, Mr Ewing. And I did hesitate slightly during my comments because I was struck, and I'll repeat it, because the submission states that the government submission states that recipients of the vaccines are given as much information on the potential side effects as possible, and the recipients must give informed consent before receiving a vaccination. Because that's exactly the phrase that was used, I recall, in relation to the use of mesh in surgical procedures. I remember vividly being told that recipients were being given as much information as possible and were giving informed consent. And the evidence of many of the women in that example was that that simply wasn't the case. So I would quite like to ask the government how it is able to assert that that practice is in place. And it may be that they can, but I would like to understand how they are able to assert that with confidence, because, and I'm quite happy to say, because the committee obviously can consider previous examples where a similar assurance was initially made but was not seen to be properly validated by the evidence that subsequently emerged. Are there any other suggestions? So, an important petition, I think, given everything that we're now looking at, with the benefit of hindsight, admittedly, but obviously on an ongoing basis in some instances as well. and we'll keep the petition open and proceed with inquiries based on the suggestions that committee members have made. Are we content? We are. Thank you very much. And I'm not sure if we have members of the petition in the gallery with us today, so I hope you're content that we're keeping the petition open and proceeding on that basis. Petition number 2086 to recognise the vaccine injured and offer appropriate treatment. This lodged by William Queen, and it calls on the Scottish Parliament to urge the Scottish Government to acknowledge those injured by COVID-19 vaccines and to have the NHS offer appropriate treatment to those who are injured. Last considered on May 29th last, when we agreed to write to the Scottish Government to seek information on informed consent, specialist diagnostic testing and specialist treatment. And the Scottish Government's response states that information on the potential side effects of the COVID-19 vaccine is provided with each appointment letter, which includes links to further detailed information. And the submission highlights that staff at clinics are trained to answer any questions about side effects and that each patient must give informed consent before receiving a vaccination. I have to say that has been my own personal experience. The Scottish Government submission states that there is currently no specialist diagnostic testing available for the COVID-19 vaccine-related harm. But there are other methods of diagnosis. For example, if a patient has a condition that is known side effect, further tests or clinical assessment could be done to rule it out or to rule out other likely causes. However, there may be nothing definitive to confirm the cause of the condition. The submission reiterates that regardless of how the individual contracted a condition, they would be offered the same treatment then as any other patient. The petitioner's written submission highlights concerns that patients are not being adequately treated for the conditions they are presenting with, resulting in some individuals seeking private treatment. He points to vaccine-induced myocarditis as a condition that can be difficult to diagnose. He also states that he is aware people have been described as over-anxious when seeking support through the NHS, leading them to be hesitant about continuing to seek support, while others have pursued private care and received a diagnosis of heart injury. Again, I believe we may well have the petitioner with us in the gallery in relation to this petition this morning, so good morning and welcome to you. I do think that there continue to be issues of substance here. I think this is a petition we'd want to hold open. Do members have any calls or suggestions for action? Faisal Chowdhury.
I think we should keep this open and write to the Scottish Government to ask whether conditions that could be side effects of COVID-19 vaccination are being monitored to assess whether the conditions are presenting differently for those whose illness may be a result of COVID-19 vaccine.
Are any other suggestions? Mr Ewing.
Yes, I note the petitioner's written submission, recent submission of the 23rd of January, which extends to 2.5 pages of A4, is very closely argued and covers an awful lot of points, which I won't rehearse now, but plainly petitioner has, possibly with others, carried out a great deal of background work here, and I wonder if the Minister specifically could be asked to respond to the main points raised by the petitioner in that submission, because I think they are, in many cases, points of principle which should be addressed because they may affect many people, as indeed the petitioner suggested was the case in his original petition and comments submitted therewith.
I think that Mr Chowdhury.
Sorry, can you also write to NHS Scotland, ask them how they are treating COVID-19? Because there is, I had a roundtable and I was told that they're not treated as a patient, or they're not giving priorities, whereas people have reservations about their illness.
Okay.
So do you think we could ask NHS?
We can do that. I think, though, that Mr Ewing is correct. I mean, I think we have got quite a comprehensive series of very specific points that the petitioner has advised in their latest petition, which we could condense into a specific series of questions to put to the Minister and see what response we can obtain. And similarly, write to the NHS, just highlighting the issues in relation to the requests of staff. Are there any other suggestions? Are we content to keep the petition open and to pursue those particular points? We are, and I think in so doing, can we thank the petitioner for the work that they have done in relation to the ongoing underpinning of the petition that was submitted, and we will take forward and seek specific evidence on the very particular points that have been identified in the most recent submission. Okay, thank you. That brings us to the end of syndrome. Petition number 2086 to recognise the vaccine injured and offer appropriate treatment was lodged by William Queen, and it calls on the Scottish Parliament to urge the Scottish Government to acknowledge those injured by COVID-19 vaccines and to have the NHS offer appropriate treatment to those who are injured. We last considered this petition on the 5th of March this year when we agreed to write to the Cabinet Secretary for Health and Social Care in NHS Scotland. The Scottish Government's response to the petition reiterates that in many cases it may be difficult for a clinician to explicitly determine if an illness or condition is linked to vaccination, and that it understands how this lack of acknowledgement may be deeply frustrating for citizens. The submission reiterates that if a patient has been vaccine injured and is experiencing a particular condition or symptom as a result, then the NHS should treat them for that condition as they would with any other patient who displayed those symptoms, regardless of the cause. And the petitioner's most recent submission highlights differences in the national response to long COVID and vaccine injury, as he states that resources have been given to address long COVID, whereas people with vaccine injury feel ignored. And as I set out in my opening remarks, we are now limited in the time remaining in this parliamentary session, and I feel that we've either made progress or as much progress as we can in this Parliament has been made with these petitions, one or two of which may want to see the results of promises that have been made realised and may well emerge as the subject of fresh petitions in the new Parliament. But I wonder, Mr Torrance, if you've any recommendation for the committee.
Thank you, Convener. I wonder if the committee would consider petition 1952, petition 2031, petition 2038, petition 2080 and petition 2086. I wonder if we consider closing the petitions under Rule 15.7 of Standing Orders on the basis that the committee has progressed issues raised in individual petitions as far as possible in this parliamentary session, and the committee has raised relevant issues as part of a thematic evidence session with the Cabinet Secretary for Health and Social Care.
Thank you, Mr Torrance. Are we agreed?